The story begins after the battle against the strongest warriors of the universe, being completely beaten by someone they didn't expect. This guy was Frieza, who had returned with a new power that had far exceeded the current scale of power, easily lowering 2 divine doctrines in just one blow. After this, Frieza makes it clear that his target was not Goku or Vegeta, leaving the planet with a smile of satisfaction after having completely overwhelmed the 2 Saiyans. Sometime later, Goku was on Earth with Vegeta and the Capsule Corporation, who were talking about the extraordinary power that reached again the Emperor of the Universe, who had mentioned that this had trained 10 years in a time room on one of the planets he had conquered. This leaves Vegeta very enraged, who shouted at Goku, who had warned him before. In 4 months, Frieza had achieved a great advance in a very short time, which prevented him from continuing to increase his power by resuming the training he had carried out the first time he was resurrected. And now, what happened? Goku, who was getting tired of Vegeta's shouts and sermons, "No need to yell like that." Of course he knows. As he said before, if it wasn't for Frieza's power, they wouldn't have been able to win the Tournament of Power, and would have been eliminated just the same. "We had no choice but to bring Frieza back to life." Vegeta, quite irritated, turns around and says that sooner or later he'll return to Earth in search of vengeance, and before leaving, he says that his target is not them yet. "When he finishes off his own business, he'll return to destroy us," Vegeta comments. However, Goku comes with a pretty crazy idea, mentioning that they just have to overcome Frieza's power again, and the matter's settled. Vegeta, rather irritated, asks him, "And how do you expect to do such a crazy thing?" Which the Saiyan, looking at the sky, thoughtful with a face full of doubts, he mentions that they'll also train in the Room of Time. Which Vegeta, closing his eyes, mentions that unlike Frieza, they'd need much more time to reach the power he was at now. Not to mention that they don't have a millennial life to waste in that place. Which Goku, with a smile, reveals that he's willing to train for 30 years in the Room of Time. 30 years! Vegeta exclaims. "Why don't you think a little?" Closing his eyes and mentioning that if he likes, he can go and train as long as he wants. After all, he no longer needs that room to become stronger. His new power allows him to become more and more powerful as he fights different enemies, unlike Goku, who needs a lot of time and concentration to perfect and master Ultra Instinct. And even more, a variation of the same power by using emotions to fight his way. Goku, without much to say, is ready to travel to the place of the gods. That is, until Lord Whis, who was on Earth with Bulma, receives a call from the High Priest, informing him that the King of All wants to visit Earth, if it's no trouble. This alarms the angel, who didn't expect something as sudden as this. Goku, seeing Whis had reacted that way, decides to approach to see what was happening with Vegeta. Whis, observing Goku with a serious face, comments to them that the King of Everything is heading right now to Earth. This surprises the Saiyans a lot, including Bulma, who remembered that little colorful child on that occasion. Goku, now that he remembers, this one had mentioned to the Zeno of the present about taking him to Earth sometime the day he went to visit the palace for the first time. Whis mentions that he sincerely considers Goku to be a real danger by influencing the King of all universes by making decisions like that. The Saiyan simply mentions that nothing bad will happen. Just show him the Earth is much more fun than the palace that time. This makes Whis sigh, asking Bulma if she's able to prepare a welcome for the King of Everything, who was more than nervous to have that kind of guest in her home, agreeing to prepare everything as quickly as possible, along with Whis, who would help her with her preparations. After a while, Zeno-sama arrives on Earth, accompanied by his guards, along with the High Priest, who greets him with much education to the Earthlings, who were waiting with much trepidation to the god rulers of all. They comment Daishinkan, while Goku, with a smile, approached them with total tranquility and confidence, greeting the same way to the King of Everything, who were more than happy to see their friend, wanting to show them those fun things that the planet Earth has, which the Saiyan agrees to show them these amusement parks that Bulma has not far from the place, taking them along with his son Goten and Trunks, who were in Bulma's house. Meanwhile, Whis talks a little with his father about a couple of things between angels and universes. Between that conversation, they mention Miras, an angel who would become immortal after the battle against Moro, staying in the intergalactic building fighting for justice. After having talked a little, Whis introduces him to Bulma, who was near them. The Earthling, very nervous, greets cordially the father of the angels, smiling at him and saying that it's a pleasure, thanking him for having received them with so much effort. Bulma says that it was thanks to Whis who had helped her to prepare most of the things. While Bulma was talking with the angels, Vegeta kept a not very long distance while the party was going on with total normalcy. After a while, Goku returns with the kings, arriving just in time for the banquet they had prepared, mentioning that he was starving. After everyone had finished eating, both Zenos talked to Goku to visit other fun places to play, which the Saiyan, who showed his sincere apologies, tells them that he actually has other things to do, attracting the attention of the kings, who ask, "What is it that he has to do?" The thing Goku reveals to Zeno is that he has to become much stronger, or else a very powerful enemy could appear at any moment. And for that, he needs to go to train very hard in the Room of Time to increase his powers. This surprises the gods a lot, who fear that total confidence that Goku has by going with the Zeno-sama, among them the High Priest along with the guards, think that both kings they take it in a very good way, asking him if after becoming strong, they'll go again to those funny places, receiving a positive answer from Goku, nodding his head while confirming it. This makes the kings excited, who decide to give the order to the High Priest to train Goku to become very strong in a short time, leaving more than surprised all those present, much more to the High Priest, and Vegeta to hear excellent requests by the kings. Daishinkan comments that the only ones capable of withstanding a training on their part are the angels themselves, beings of much higher category. Even for the gods, that role of mentor are allowed the guardian angels designated to their respective universes. This makes a little angry Zeno-sama, mentioning that Goku is incredibly strong. He can easily withstand this training, directing his gaze to the Saiyan, who asks if he's right, which Goku, a little nervous, not knowing how strong he would be training with the father of Whis, but this does not take away the desire to try, which the priest, with a smile, agrees to train Goku, asking him if he wants to carry out his training in the room he had mentioned before, which Goku confirms that this is his plan from the beginning. The time room is a place where time and space run completely different. A day inside that room would be a full year. This surprises the priest, who did not expect that such a place existed on planet Earth. In that, a very angry Vegeta approaches Goku, mentioning that it's not fair. Goku goes to train with the father of Whis, who knows for how long. Goku mentions to him what Vegeta had mentioned previously, about his lack of interest to return to train in that place. After a brief chat between all of them, both beings immediately move to the place of the gods of Earth, greeting him cordially with the priest, which Dende greets him in the same way, who had prostrated himself before the deity who was visiting. After this, Goku and Daishinkan finally enter the Room of Time to carry out the training of the Saiyans. Meanwhile, somewhere in Universe 7, Granola was at his planet with Minato, who had gathered the Dragon Balls without complications, thanks to the radar that Vegeta had left them before leaving the planet. After invoking the dragon of this place, Granola asks him to please restore the planet as it was before the arrival of the Saiyans, which the dragon, without much effort, returns to normal. All the disaster that the fighting had caused that had taken place, healing the wounds and returning to life the beings of the planet who were completely innocent. After making this wish, the dragon proceeds to disperse all the balls all over the place. Then Minato kindly asks Granola to gather the spheres again to deactivate them, as he promised. Granola agrees to gather them immediately, traveling through a planet already rebuilt again. Once gathered, the spheres proceeds to cast a spell in the language of the Namekians to seal those spheres that caused so much disaster. However, at that moment, that Minato launched a spell. The Dragon Balls began to crack slightly, turning their stars into a darker tone, together with a very powerful purple mantle around them. Granola, seeing that the spheres emanated a very sinister energy, asked if that was normal. Minato, who had a face of a quite notorious impression, exclaims that he couldn't believe it. They were very frightened by the situation, and he asked Granola to destroy them before it was too late. Granola was shocked by the Namek's words. Without hesitation, he concentrates a powerful energy on his fingertips, launching a very powerful attack, taking the spheres away. Unfortunately, it was too late. From the Dragon Balls, the dragon had emerged again, but this time it was much larger, surrounded by a very intense negative energy, leaving Granola shocked, wondering what it was. "This is not the same dragon that made the wish a short time ago. What does this mean?" Granola comments. At that, Minato, very desperate, would say quickly, "All those who gathered the Dragon Balls in the last 500 years have been selfish wishes, who had altered reality to their own benefit, saturating the spheres with negative energy. Apparently the last two wishes, omitting the one to restore the planet, caused a great impact on the balls, by granting them the desire to be the most powerful in the universe, to both you and gas, with the condition of subtracting their years of life. I dare say that right now the power of the Dragon Balls far exceeds the combined power of both you and gas. This left Granola frozen, who couldn't believe the consequences of the wish he had made. At that moment, the dragon split into two individuals that emanated an incredible power, invading the fair planet, completely melting the trees along with nature, affecting even the inhabitants of this place. Granola, who was on guard, saw two figures very similar to humanoid dragons. After having entered the Room of Time, Goku shows him that this is the place he had trained for a long time with his friends. The High Priest, looking carefully at the room, was slightly surprised, but in the end, it turned out to be no big deal. The reality is that there are time rooms much more complete and efficient than this one. This place isn't even close to the time room where he trained the angels. This surprises Goku, who wonders what the differences between one room and the other would be, something the priest seeing the horizon would mention. In that place, it's completely impossible to move as long as you keep your consciousness. You must separate the mind from the body so that it can move on its own. In other words, it's essential to master Ultra Instinct, the same power that was shown in the Tournament of Power. In the opposite case, that enters without mastering this ability in your body would be completely paralyzed at the molecular level. Goku, after hearing this, asks what he means by molecular level, which the priest reveals that if Goku would enter that room of time without mastering Ultra Instinct, he couldn't even breathe. His blood would stop circulating, his system would freeze, while his body would be torn apart by not expelling enough power. In other words, he would die instantly. Not to mention that time doesn't pass in that place, unlike this room where a year passes in just one day on the other side. This surprises Goku, who is more than excited to train in a place like this. It'd be more than perfect. This intrigues the priest, reminding him that the minimum requirement is to be able. At that moment, Daishinkan is interrupted by the ki of Goku, who had transformed, accessing the power of Ultra Instinct, mentioning that he's already able to access this power at will, showing him the great progress he had made since then. Daishinkan puts on a slightly impressed face, mentioning that he really has improved a lot since the Tournament of Power. If he participated in his current condition, he would have undoubtedly won without much hassle. These words left Goku more than proud of his power. Nevertheless, someone remembers the new power that Frieza had reached, mentioning that it's still not enough. Some time ago, Whis mentioned that to dominate the Ultra Instinct is not the end. It is only the beginning, wanting to become much more powerful than he is at the moment. The priest comments that in effect to accede at will to the power of Ultra Instinct is only the beginning of a long way. After a brief chat, the great priest mentions that it's not necessary to travel to the dimension where the angels trained. They can turn this room into a dimension somewhat similar to the one he has in the palace of Zeno-sama, with the only difference that in this place time will pass, but much slower than it was before. If his calculations don't fail him, a day on Earth would be approximately 100,000 years in this room of time. This greatly impacts Goku, who tries to tell him that it's not necessary to exaggerate so much with time. However, Daishinkan raises both arms, completely rebuilding the dimension by means of his powers, improving millions of times the efficiency of the time room of planet Earth, increasing the pressure and gravity to stellar levels, changing several parameters while adding new improvements. However, what Goku didn't expect was that the priest had added something very peculiar to the dimension, completely sealing the leaks that were in the place, completely eliminating the connection that had this dimension with the other world, as if it were a prison. The Saiyan, who kept his Ultra Instinct form at all times, feels how this change takes over his whole body, feeling like his body was trying to dodge some kind of danger at all time, leaving him in shock without being able to react, who in just an instant is completely trapped in his limbs by a kind of ki weight, sealing it completely and falling to the ground without being able to move at all. Goku found himself in serious trouble. He barely managed to speak, saying, "What is this? It's too much. It's impossible for him to manage to train in this situation. The hell is he thinking of doing?" Daishinkan, observing Goku with quite a serious look, says to him, "Pitifully, this is not training. His presence is a real danger to the balance of the universe. This has nothing to do with the power he has managed to get. If not that, Zeno-sama is willing to do anything for Goku. Both kings have immense power capable of destroying everything, but they don't have the capacity to reason correctly without depending on their emotions. And that's what I'm for." Who guides him on the path that all kings of the universes must follow. At the beginning, he was very happy that Zeno-sama had gotten a friend, but after this, Goku brought a Zeno-sama from the future. At the beginning, this didn't bother him either. This is already getting out of control. He apologizes sincerely to the Saiyan. But I must lock him in this place forever, for everyone's sake. Honestly, I could just eliminate his existence, but if I do, Zeno-sama will know immediately. Mentioning the button that granted him the bosom of the present some time ago, that button was created exclusively for Goku. If he dies, the link will be broken and draw his attention. Consider this as a sacrifice for the universe's sake, Lord Goku. Goku, who supported an immense burden on his entire body, being imprisoned without being able to move with great difficulty, mentions that at this rate he'll die anyway, which the priest mentions that this won't be a problem, raising his hand, granting a kind of basic immortality to the Saiyan, mentioning that he is really sorry, and leaving that place without saying another word, leaving Goku completely immobilized. While he shouted to wait, being completely ignored, completely sealed in this place. Goku, seeing the big problem he was in, was cursing with a lot of strength to the father of the angels, who had deceived and betrayed him, leaving him in this place.